12. Brittany Jones and Jeremiah Isaiah Robinson. In early 2017, a 26-year-old Florida woman named Brittany Lachelle Jones was accused of performing an inappropriate act on a bench inside a Duval County courthouse and posting the footage online. The video, which was filmed in an empty hallway with a male counterpart, appeared on Twitter along with the caption, "Found a way to get my charges dropped." Jones was at the courthouse that day to be arraigned on a drug charge. She pleaded no contest in that case and was sentenced to 2 days in jail with credit for time served. After discovering the video, which was also captured on surveillance footage, authorities issued a warrant for her and the accused male party, 35-year-old Jeremiah Isaiah Robinson, on a lascivious act charge. Despite the caption accompanying the video on social media, Robinson was not a courthouse employee. Robinson turned himself in, and Jones was arrested a few weeks later. During her arraignment, she was hit with an additional charge for distribution of obscene material. The young woman's lawyer, Jerry Sessions, told reporters that he was unhappy with the amount of force the state seemed to be imposing on his client. Also, adding that he suspected that there was a retaliatory aspect to how Jones was being treated by the system. Both parties pleaded not guilty, and the outcomes of their cases are unclear. As a result of the incident, security was heightened at the Duval County Courthouse to prevent something similar from happening in the future. 11. Emily Craig and Sean Bowden. Shortly before 9 a.m. one day in August of 2013, police in North Charleston, South Carolina were called to a Home Depot store by someone who'd seen a man and a woman entering one of the business's outdoor display sheds. The pair had closed the door and were in the shed for a long time, raising suspicions about what they were doing in there. Responding officers opened the door to find a partially clothed woman and a man with his pants around his knees. According to a police report, it became evident during questioning that the couple had retreated to the shed for an intimate encounter. Authorities charged 31-year-old Sean Bowden and 20-year-old Emily Craig with disorderly conduct for creating alarm and being a nuisance. Bowden faced an additional charge of indecent exposure, while Craig was charged with giving false information to police for lying about her name and birth date. When Bowden failed to show up at court, the case was tried anyway and he was convicted of both charges. The judge sentenced him to 2 concurrent 30-day jail sentences and issued a bench warrant for his arrest. Craig pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct and filing a false report and was sentenced to time served. 10. Philip Frank Panzica III and Chloe Scordianos. The high roller Ferris wheel is known as the happiest half hour in Las Vegas. It certainly lived up to its name for 27-year-old Philip Frank Panzica III and 21-year-old Chloe Scordianos, who were caught getting frisky on the ride in 2016 while visiting the city from Texas and New York. The couple were riding alone in one of the ride's enclosed glass cabins when employees noticed that they were getting unclothed. Using the intercom, workers instructed the pair to get dressed several times, but Panzica and Scordianos ignored the commands while enjoying a post-romp cigarette. The mid-air romp continued even as riders in other cabins began recording the risque encounter on their phones, and despite the fact that the incident was being captured by surveillance cameras. Panzica and Scordianos were arrested for their behavior, but a judge set a court date in hopes of resolving the matter without going to trial. In the meantime, Panzica shamelessly accepted $4,000 for an interview with the tabloid show Inside Edition. Then, in a shocking and unexpected twist, he was shot dead in a carjacking in Houston just a month after the incident. According to court documents, the Ferris wheel tryst may have set the stage for the murder. Prosecutors allege that the accused killers, Brian Christopher Watts and Aaron Jones, may have been tempted to commit the crime after seeing Panzica flashing around his payout from Inside Edition. Watts was convicted of murder and received a 50-year prison sentence. The outcome of the case against Jones is unclear. 9. Elisa Alvarez and Jose Caballero. Beachgoers in Manatee County, Florida were repulsed when they saw a couple fornicating in broad daylight in July of 2014. Witnesses called law enforcement and told responding officers that the X-rated interaction began with heavy touching and progressed to full-on intercourse in plain view. 7 people filled out reports about what they saw, and police arrested 40-year-old Jose Caballero and 20-year-old Elisa Alvarez with felony counts of lewd and lascivious behavior. The suspects took their cases to trial, where several witnesses testified to seeing the pair grinding in an unmistakably inappropriate way that left nothing to the imagination. Despite the number of people who took the stand and provided graphic details of the incident, Caballero claimed that the witnesses were mistaken. After deliberating for just 15 minutes, the jury found both defendants guilty. Because she had no prior arrests, Alvarez received a more lenient sentence of time served, while Caballero, a convicted felon, was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. 8. Camden Mack and Taylor Coates. When a lifeguard at the Kalahari Resort in Erie County, Ohio, saw a couple fornicating in a hot tub in March of 2019, he told them to leave. They refused, so he called the police. According to an arrest report, 25-year-old Camden Mack and 22-year-old Taylor Coates were going at it around 8 p.m. with several families seated nearby. Instead of cooperating with instructions to leave, Mack reportedly became irate and struck the lifeguard. When police arrived at the scene, the couple attempted to flee the scene. Coates initially got away while Mack was tackled to the ground, handcuffed and placed in the back of a patrol car. He managed to open the door due to a malfunctioning lock and once again made a run for it, but was quickly tackled and returned to the vehicle. In the meantime, police found Coates in her hotel room. The couple, who were visiting from Michigan, were each charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct and criminal trespassing. Additionally, Mack was hit with a felony escape charge. Coates was released on her own recognizance, and Mack was released from the Erie County Jail after posting a $21,000 bond. He allegedly told police he was a lawyer, despite listing himself as an UGG footwear store manager on social media. The outcome of the case is unclear. 7. Desiree Anderson and Robert Beasley. A visit to the Wisconsin State Fair in West Allis got hot and heavy for one particular couple in August of 2017, when they were seen having intercourse on the stands of a coliseum that's typically used for horse and dog shows. 28-year-old Desiree Anderson and her husband, 28-year-old Robert Beasley, seemed perfectly aware that people were watching. Beasley was even seen waving and smiling at an onlooker after noticing that they were filming the encounter. Footage of the X-rated interaction went viral, leading to the identification and arrest of Anderson and Beasley. They both took deals that spared them from jail or prison time, but both landed back behind bars within months of their arrest. By May of 2018, Beasley was locked up in Milwaukee County for having contact with someone he was not supposed to interact with, while Anderson landed in much bigger trouble. She had been arrested several times since the fair incident, including for retail theft, and was also facing drug charges after being caught with pills and a large amount of cocaine. Anderson was potentially facing decades in prison, but records show that she's currently on probation. 6. Daniel Gorowski and Julie Dams. A visitor at a public library in Waukesha, Wisconsin, received the unexpected shock of walking in on an unclothed couple in the middle of an intimate encounter when she entered the unlocked family restroom in March of 2015. She immediately notified a security guard of what she'd seen, which was occurring on top of a toilet. When the guard tried entering the restroom, the door was locked. He could hear what sounded like someone getting dressed and zipping their pants. 29-year-old Daniel Gorowski and 19-year-old Julie Dams emerged from the restroom and apologized, saying it wouldn't happen again. The police got involved, and Dams reportedly said that she and Gorowski had gotten excited because they hadn't seen each other in a few days. Dams received a citation, while Gorowski, a repeat offender, was charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct. Records showed that he pleaded guilty to the charge and was sentenced to 90 days in jail. 5. Penny Snoots and Thomas Lewis. Early one morning in January of 2019, a middle-aged Florida couple was seen engaging in lewd behavior near a park in Gulfport. A 911 caller described seeing a man and a woman getting frisky in the middle of the road before moving their tryst onto the hood of a car. As the responding officer pulled up to the scene, she observed the male party hurriedly pulling up and buttoning his shorts. The cop also saw a woman walking away and pulling her pants up with her rear end exposed. Identified by the officer as 56-year-old Penny Snoots and 58-year-old Thomas Lewis, an off-duty St. Petersburg firefighter. The suspects were each charged with one count of misdemeanor lewd and lascivious behavior. Additionally, Snoots was charged with marijuana possession after a small amount of the drug was found in her purse. 4. Dakota Payne and Kiernan Hennessy. In August 2017, a concerned civilian in Cay, South Carolina spotted two people on the ground in the middle of a golf course fairway. He initially believed that someone was having a medical emergency, but realized that it was a couple being intimate after grabbing his binoculars for a closer look. Meanwhile, two other witnesses mistook the fornicating pair for a deer lying in the grass, but quickly discovered that they were wrong upon closer examination. One of the onlookers dialed 911 and reported that a man and a woman were having intercourse on hole number 8 of the golf course. A responding police officer called the mostly unclothed suspects in the act, noting in a report that he had to instruct the pair to get dressed multiple times. Identified by law enforcement as 24-year-old Kiernan Hennessy and 19-year-old Dakota Payne, the couple were each charged with misdemeanor indecent exposure. The arrest report stated that Hennessy acknowledged that she and Payne should not have been engaged in those activities within public view. The story went viral when the news of the arrests first broke, but quickly went quiet afterward, leaving the outcome of the case unclear. 3. Jonathan Hightower and LaShanda Fisher. In December 2017, police responded to a Tex-Mex restaurant in Austin, Texas, where a couple was seen engaging in highly inappropriate acts in plain view of other customers. A disturbed diner told officers that she was in the middle of enjoying her meal when she looked over at the couple's booth and saw a woman's head bobbing up and down near her male companion's crotch for 5 minutes. Another witness provided an even more detailed and alarming description of what they saw, which included certain exposed body parts. After reviewing surveillance footage of the incident, police arrested 32-year-old Jonathan Hightower and 29-year-old LaShanda Fisher for public lewdness, which carries a maximum sentence of 1 year in jail. Hightower pleaded no contest to the charge and was sentenced to 2 days in jail and ordered to pay a $500 fine. Fisher entered a deferred adjudication agreement, resulting in 70 hours of community service, a $200 fine, and an order to stay away from the restaurant where the incident occurred. 2. Daniel McCleary and Donald Engstrom. In July of 2021, a police officer in St. Petersburg, Florida, caught two old men getting it on, completely unclothed in public view. 60-year-old Daniel McCleary and 59-year-old Donald Engstrom were arrested in the vicinity of a small park on suspicion of misdemeanor indecent exposure. They were booked into the county jail and released the following day on their own recognizance. In the arrest report, the officer noted an indication of alcohol influence among the two suspects. At the time, Engstrom had a single DUI conviction on his otherwise clean record. McCleary, on the other hand, had an extensive criminal history which included convictions for battery, burglary, resisting arrest, theft, domestic battery, battery on a law enforcement officer, trespassing, drunk driving, cocaine possession, violating probation, and leaving the scene of the accident. The outcomes of their cases are unclear. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Conrad Jablecki. In March of 2017, an employee at a McDonald's restaurant in Shrewsbury, Pennsylvania, spotted a man and a woman engaging in an illicit act in the dining room and chased them out of the restaurant. The suspected male party, 30-year-old Conrad Jablecki of Bel Air, Maryland, was arrested shortly thereafter, while the female suspect managed to elude law enforcement. Jablecki was charged with indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, and open lewdness. He had an extensive criminal history in neighboring Maryland, which includes prior convictions earlier that year for public drunkenness and disorderly conduct. His record also included past arrests for drug possession, theft, and indecent exposure. In the previous indecent exposure case, which took place in June of 2011, Jablecki was accused of exposing himself to several people at the beach in Ocean City. He pleaded guilty to a reduced disorderly conduct charge and received a suspended 60-day jail sentence and 2 years of probation. Jablecki violated the terms of his probation and ended up serving the 60 days in jail. The outcome of his more recent indecent exposure case is unclear, and it's also unknown whether the female party was ever caught. 13. Catherine Colabella, aka Kitty Bella. A former adult actress from South Florida became entangled in not one, but 2 hit-and-run crashes over a 2.5-year period beginning in March 2021. Catherine Colabella's first arrest came after she allegedly struck a cyclist along the MacArthur Causeway in Miami Beach and fled the scene in her vehicle. The victim survived after being rushed to a nearby hospital and undergoing emergency surgery for a brain bleed. Cola Bella, also known by her stage name Kitty Bella, was charged in connection with the hit and run after her Mercedes-Benz was identified in traffic footage as the vehicle suspected in the crash. Video evidence showed the car traveling from near the accident scene to a high-end condominium complex, where Cola Bella handed the vehicle over to a valet and proceeded to visit a resident of the building. After noticing the damage to her car and that she seemed drunk, employees called 911. Responding officers had the car towed and held off on arresting Cola Bella until the next morning, when she showed up at the police department looking for the vehicle. She reportedly confessed to the hit and run and claimed that she'd fled because she panicked. Cola Bella also allegedly admitted to drinking and driving. Authorities charged her with felony counts of reckless driving and leaving the scene of a crash with serious bodily injury. Despite the seriousness of the charges, Cola Bella managed to avoid prison time. She was initially sentenced to house arrest and managed to get the punishment reduced to regular probation. In September 2023, Cola Bella was accused of committing another hit and run while still on probation for the 2021 incident. According to police, she rear-ended a vehicle at a red light in Plantation and drove away without stopping to deal with the accident. This time, police managed to catch up with her and pull her over. The arresting officer noticed the distinct odor of alcohol on Cola Bella's breath and that her eyes were bloodshot. He soon took her into custody on suspicion of DUI, driving with a suspended license, and violating her probation. Cola Bella is being held without bond at the Miami-Dade County Jail while awaiting the outcome of her case. 2. Camila Navarro, aka Mia Echeverria. Before she made international news headlines for allegedly smuggling cocaine, 27-year-old Camila Navarro, better known as Mia Echeverria, made a name for herself as one of Uruguay's top adult film stars. She's also the famous ex-wife of 48-year-old soccer star Richard Morales, who she has 2 children with. In July of 2023, Echeverria was among a group of 3 women and 2 men who were detained following the discovery of a 14-pound cocaine stash in their luggage at Carrasco International Airport in Montevideo. They were attempting to travel to Spain when the drugs were found during a routine baggage search. Echeverria initially denied having any knowledge of the copious coke supply, and in a rare display of support between exes, Morales paid all her legal fees. The former footballer continued to pay for his ex-wife's representation, even after it became clear that she wasn't so innocent after all. A search of Echeverria's phone revealed that she'd sent text messages to her co-conspirators containing tips about how to avoid getting caught with drugs at the airport. In one message, she reminded her accomplices that having the right attitude would help them get through security without raising suspicion. She also advised her fellow gang members to act touristy by taking photos and acting intrigued about their surroundings. As the evidence stacked up against the blonde bombshell, she realized it was in her best interest to strike a plea deal and confess to her role in the drug plot. By coming clean, Echeverria cut her possible 18-year prison sentence down to just 2 years and 7 months, which will enable her to serve her time and put the incident behind her without causing any lasting damage to her life. 11. Casey Jordan. During American actor Charlie Sheen's infamous mental breakdown in 2011, he allegedly partied for 36 hours straight with former adult actress Casey Jordan. The Two and a Half Men star allegedly paid the much younger 22-year-old bombshell $30,000 for her companionship before he was rushed to the hospital in the throes of a mental crisis just days later. Jordan told E! News that Sheen used so much cocaine and booze during their binge that he seemed like he was on a mission to self-destruct. She described the troubled celebrity as kind and sweet, but criticized him for not lasting very long in the bedroom. In light of Jordan's claims, Sheen's representatives released a statement accusing opportunistic women of trying to take advantage of his celebrity status while he sought help for his problems. A peek into Jordan's past revealed that she herself was far from innocent. According to records obtained by the Daily Mail, she was arrested in West Hollywood in 2009 for allegedly driving under the influence. The news outlet published the adult star's tear-soaked mugshot, along with details about how she spent 20 days in check after pleading no contest to the charge. When Sheen went public about his HIV-positive status 4 years after his viral meltdown in 2015, Jordan told the Daily Mail that she wasn't surprised given the disgraced actor's history of risky behavior. She commended Sheen for being open about his diagnosis, but said that the news presented her with new fears about her own reputation, given their intimate past. Jordan said she'd been tested multiple times and was negative for the virus, but her past association with Sheen still caused people to wonder, and it had a negative impact on her professional image. She admonished him for his frequent encounters with porn stars, despite being an adult actress herself, and said that she hoped Sheen continued to make changes for the better. 10. Amanda Sunnyday Logue and Jason Addison Andrews. Amanda Logue, better known as Sunnyday, and Jason Andrews were brought together in 2010 by their careers in the adult film industry. At first glance, it was the only thing they had in common. Logue was a married prostitute from Georgia who dabbled in multiple adult professions, while Andrews was a British DJ who starred mostly in gay movies. But the pair shared an insatiable attraction to one another, along with a sinister desire to rob and kill an unsuspecting tattoo artist named Dennis Scooter Abrahamson. 41-year-old Abrahamson had hired Logue to work as a prostitute at a vice-fueled party at his home in Port Richey, Florida. In the days leading up to the event, Logue and Andrews exchanged dozens of text messages, hashing out the specific details of their murderous plot. The pair attended the party and acted normal until after all the other guests went home. Once there were no witnesses present, Andrews repeatedly stabbed Abrahamson and bludgeoned his skull with a sledgehammer. The killer couple fled the state with $6,000 of stolen cash and the victim's credit cards. Nearly 2 months after Abrahamson's murder, Andrews was picked up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he'd landed work as a nightclub manager. Logue was also found and arrested. She tried blaming the entire murder on Andrews, claiming he forced her to watch and threatened to kill her if she told anyone. But the evidence showed that she was an equal participant in the twisted plot. Both parties were convicted of first-degree murder. Logue received a 40-year sentence and will be released in 2047 at the age of 65, while Andrews is serving the rest of his natural life behind bars with no possibility of parole. 9. John Champ Snavely. John Champ Snavely was discovered by an adult acting recruiter in 2009 while working as a stripper in San Antonio. He moved to Florida, where he continued dancing in clubs and took a job dancing in adult movies geared toward a female audience. It paid $500 per day, which would be good money even now, but it was especially good money back in 2010. In 2013, Snavely was arrested on a drug charge in Miami. As a standard part of the booking process, police took a sample of his DNA, which turned up as a match to the profile of a previously unidentified suspect in a murder case from 3 years earlier. According to authorities, Snavely met the victim, 60-year-old marketing executive Sam Del Brocco, at a strip club in Fort Lauderdale. The pair went back to Del Brocco's Pompano Beach townhouse together, where Del Brocco was reportedly stabbed to death. Prosecutors accused Snavely of being the killer after DNA and fingerprint evidence allegedly linked him to the crime scene and the victim's car. Snavely maintained his innocence and refused to cop to a murder charge. In a motion to dismiss the case, his lawyer pointed out that DNA found on the murder weapon and the marijuana joint did not belong to Snavely. Furthermore, the movements of Del Brocco's cell phone indicated that he left his townhouse for a second time that night and went to a location in Fort Lauderdale. During his time, it's possible that Del Brocco picked up the man that the mystery DNA belongs to, and Snavely's lawyer argued that there's no reason the unnamed individual couldn't be the real killer. Luckily for Snavely, the judge agreed, ultimately ruling that there simply wasn't enough evidence to proceed with the case. The charges against the defendant were dismissed, and he was free to carry on his life as usual. 8. Katrina Danforth, aka Lynn Pleasant. In December 2018, an actress named Katrina Danforth was accused of trying to hire someone to kill the father of one of her children. The 31-year-old from Post Falls, Idaho, who performed under the name Lynn Pleasant, allegedly sought the services of an undercover cop posing as a hitman. According to court documents, Danforth told the fake assassin that she didn't care if anyone other than her child was hurt in the process of killing her ex. She just wanted the job done, and she agreed to pay $5,000 to make her baby daddy disappear for good. Danforth mailed $2,500 to the undercover as a down payment, at which point she was taken into custody. Federal authorities arrested Danforth at the Spokane International Airport in Washington on 5 counts of using interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire. She pleaded not guilty to the charges, but eventually admitted to 2 counts of soliciting murder for hire. Danforth faced up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. In hopes of mitigating the punishment, her defense attorneys told the court about her troubled childhood and the struggle she faced before becoming an adult actress. They pushed for a sentence of a little over 7 years. But the judge was apparently unmoved by the defense's pleas and instead sentenced Danforth to the maximum 10-year term, followed by 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay a $1,000 fine. According to federal prison records, Danforth is serving her time in Tallahassee, Florida, and will be released in 2026. In April 2021, after serving roughly 3 years of her sentence, Danforth requested compassionate release, arguing that her obesity and asthma make her more prone to catching a deadly case of COVID-19. The court rejected the request on several grounds, including Danforth's failure to demonstrate how releasing her after serving 1/3 of her time appropriately reflected the seriousness of her crime. In its ruling, the court noted previous concerns over Danforth's apparent lack of remorse at her sentencing hearing. Furthermore, the decision stated that the former adult actress's health conditions do not reflect the severity that a situation requires for compassionate release. The court questioned whether Danforth is medically obese and concluded that her asthma is managed just fine with medication. So, while it may have been worth a shot to try winning back her freedom, it was a failed mission at the end of the day, leaving Danforth with no choice but to continue serving her time. 7. Aaron Michael Dobbins. 31-year-old Alfred Chad McMurray was found murdered execution style in his Oakland Park, Florida home in August 2010. Responding officers arrived at the residence to find him lying face down with his hands bound behind his back and a gunshot wound to the back of his head. The killer had stolen McMurray's pickup truck, which was found abandoned and saturated in bleach outside an apartment complex the next day. McMurray's wallet, Wii video game system, laptop, and iPhone were also missing from his home. It was clear to investigators that the killers had gone to great lengths to conceal any trace of their identity. DNA evidence was recovered from the scene, but it was initially unclear whether it belonged to a suspect or to someone who was inside the home for innocent reasons. And despite their best efforts, detectives were unable to identify a suspect throughout the course of conducting interviews with persons of interest. McMurray had a history of drug addiction, but was committed to his recovery. There was no evidence to indicate that he'd relapsed and met with foul play due to a drug deal gone wrong, or any other type of drug-related violence. He was also known for being an extremely kind person, leaving his loved ones at a loss to identify anyone who might have wanted him dead. More than 12 years went by without any arrests. As time dragged on, McMurray's family began to wonder if justice would ever be served. Answers finally came in August 2022, when investigators linked DNA found under McMurray's fingernails to a 52-year-old former adult actor named Aaron Michael Dobbins. According to a spokesperson from the Broward County Sheriff's Office, Dobbins lived in Oakland Park between 2010 and 2015. Detectives initially found no links between the suspect and the victim, but a simple Google search of Dobbins' name was all it took to discover his former profession as an adult entertainer. They eventually discovered that Dobbins' roommate and ex-boyfriend, who was also an adult model, had introduced him to McMurray. The roommate, John Navarro, who also went by the nickname Mr. Muscle Stud, met McMurray through the internet, where Navarro advertised paid massages for male customers. Navarro and McMurray met on several occasions, and Dobbins joined them for at least one of the meetings. According to law enforcement, Dobbins grew insanely jealous of Navarro's interactions with McMurray. Dobbins and Navarro had dated for several years, but their relationship fell apart due to differences stemming from each man's level of openness about being gay. After the DNA discovery was made, detectives questioned Dobbins, who allegedly denied being intimate with McMurray and claimed that his DNA was under the victim's fingernails because McMurray had attacked him. He also denied ever going to McMurray's house, stating that he couldn't remember ever being at the residence. Dobbins is being held without bond at the Broward County Jail while he awaits trial on a first-degree murder charge. 6. Jennifer Marchand, aka Scarlet Rouge. After a day of heavy drinking in 2013, 24-year-old former adult actress Jennifer Marchand returned to her apartment in North Tonawanda, New York, with her boyfriend Ralph Stone Jr. The couple got into an argument which eventually escalated into violence and ended with Marchand fatally stabbing Stone. Marchand, who once went by the stage name Scarlet Rouge, claims she killed Stone in self-defense as he chased her around the apartment. According to court documents, Stone repeatedly hung up the phone when Marchand tried calling 911 and the operator tried calling back, and he warned the dispatcher that there would be trouble if they sent officers to Marchand's home. The dispatcher sent police to the residence, where officers observed a struggle between Stone and Marchand. When Stone noticed that the cops were there, he lunged at one of them, but was quickly subdued. He passed away from a single stab wound to the chest, and Marchand was charged with inflicting the fatal injury. According to a toxicology report, Stone's blood alcohol content at the time of his death was 0.285, roughly 3.5 times the legal limit for driving. There was no doubt that he was highly intoxicated, and even some members of law enforcement supported Marchand's innocence. Despite her efforts to clear her name and the circumstances surrounding the case, Marchand was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 12 years in prison. She continued to challenge her case, and in 2017, an appellate court overturned her conviction after concluding that the state had failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she did not act in self-defense. Marchand was released from custody and free to go back to living her normal life, much to the disappointment of Stone's loved ones, who felt that she'd gotten away with murder. The exonerated woman's family, on the other hand, hailed the outcome as a victory, especially since Marchand wrote her own appeal without a lawyer's help. Niagara County District Attorney Caroline A. Wojcicki vowed to look into whether there was still any way to still hold Marchand accountable under the law, but she ultimately announced that the case was unappealable and that the state did not plan to pursue the matter any further. 5. Stephen Clancy Hill, aka Steve Driver. Also known as Steve Driver, 34-year-old Stephen Clancy Hill struggled to make it in the adult film industry. He wasn't very famous, and after experiencing repeated performance issues, he was relegated to taking low-level jobs that did little more than cover his rent and provide him with a little bit of walking around money. Over time, Hill's erratic behavior and poor hygiene became too problematic even for no-name film projects. But when his employer fired him and banned him from the company's property in Los Angeles in 2010, he refused to leave peacefully. The studio's manager, Christopher Rachel, tried convincing Hill to leave without causing any further problems, but Hill grabbed a sharpened samurai sword that was being used as a movie prop and viciously attacked Rachel. 3 of Hill's former co-workers rushed to Rachel's aid, including Herbert Wong and Yuri Drell, who were struck by the blade as Hill continued swinging. The wounded victims were rushed to the hospital, where Herbert Wong died from multiple stab wounds, and Hill fled the scene. Authorities issued a warrant, charging Hill with 1 count of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. 4 days later, a SWAT team surrounded the suspect, who was armed with a sword and threatening to use it. Team members shot Hill twice with non-lethal guns, but he refused to surrender as he inched closer to a cliff. In a last-ditch effort to escape law enforcement, Hill jumped off the cliff. He died from injuries sustained during the fall, and would have most likely survived his gunshot wounds if he'd surrendered. In hindsight, it was clear that Hill's problems started long before he became an adult performer. During the late 90s, he was put on house arrest after assaulting a teacher's assistant at his college for giving him a bad grade on a paper. While on house arrest, Hill developed a fascination with the adult film industry. He began buying copious amounts of pornography, which he paid for by taking out lines of credit with no apparent plans to pay the bills. His credit tanked, and his criminal record followed him around, making it difficult for him to find and keep employment. After being fired from several jobs due to his sketchy past, Hill tried becoming an adult entertainer, and as you already know, that didn't end well. In 2019, a film about his tragic end was released. But like everything else relating to Hill's life, it too was a flop. 4. Timothy Boehm, aka Marcus Allen. In November 2006, a wealthy businessman named J.P. Kelso was found dead inside his Denver, Colorado home by his housekeeper. The 43-year-old had been shot in the head. Kelso's blood alcohol level was a staggering 0.352 at the time of his death, more than 4 times the legal limit for being considered impaired. Police initially didn't suspect foul play, but the evidence soon suggested otherwise. 3 days after Kelso's death, authorities identified Kelso's former employee and friend, 25-year-old ex-porn actor and escort Timothy Boehm, as the prime suspect in the case. Boehm appeared in over a dozen adult films in 2004 and 2005, and he was also featured on the cover of Playgirl magazine. He quit the business and moved to Denver about a year before Kelso's murder. The accused killer worked for Kelso's debt collection company for about 10 days before he stopped showing up for work, by which point he was already in the throes of a downward spiral. It would later be discovered that Kelso and Boehm stayed in touch even after the job didn't work out, and that Kelso paid Boehm for intimacy on at least one occasion. By the time a warrant was issued for Boehm's arrest for Kelso's murder, he'd fled to Mexico, but he quickly turned himself in at the Arizona border crossing. Boehm admitted that he believed Kelso had a large amount of money stashed in a safe at his house. He planned to rob his former boss, but the situation took an unplanned turn when Kelso refused to open the safe, leading to a struggle between the two men. Boehm would later claim that he accidentally shot Kelso during the fight. He also claimed that Kelso had asked him to cuddle right before he committed the robbery, indicating that the victim was totally unaware of what was about to happen or that his friend had ill intentions. After killing the victim, Boehm cut the safe open. He expected to walk away with anywhere between $100,000 and $400,000, and was shocked to discover that there was no cash in the safe at all. Before fleeing the country, Boehm returned to Kelso's home several times to destroy evidence and to try covering his tracks. He scrubbed fingerprints from the scene and dumped clothing, bedding, and a shell casing into a nearby creek. Boehm confessed to his family about the murder and said that he had planned to use the proceeds from the robbery gone wrong to flee to South America with his girlfriend. Now that plan A was out of the picture, he decided to run off to Mexico instead. Several members of Boehm's family testified against him during his trial, including his mum and sister, and his ex-girlfriend also took the stand. The defense argued that Kelso's wounds were self-inflicted and that the scene was staged as a murder so his life insurance company would pay the beneficiaries of his policy. The jury found Boehm guilty of first-degree murder, which carries an automatic life sentence without parole in Colorado. 3. Ignacio Jorda Gonzalez, aka Nacho Vidal. Better known by his stage name Nacho Vidal, 49-year-old Ignacio Jorda Gonzalez rose to fame as a performer in live adult shows in Barcelona. He went on to star in over 1,500 adult films and also became a director and producer of the genre. Vidal's legal problems began in 2012 when he and his sister were among 80 suspects who were accused of laundering money for the Chinese mob by issuing fake invoices from Vidal's adult movie company. These siblings also allegedly participated in a tax evasion scheme with the organized crime group. While the outcome of the case is unclear owing to Spain's highly protective privacy laws, it was only another handful of years before Vidal landed himself at the center of another legal scandal. This time, the controversy stemmed from the death of fashion photographer Jose Luis Abad, who died from inhaling toxic toad venom during a ceremony at Vidal's home in 2019. According to news sources, Vidal was presiding over the traditional Amazonian ritual in Anguera, Spain, as a shaman when Abad suffered fatal complications from the activity. Vidal was initially arrested alongside a relative and an employee on suspicion of manslaughter, based on the accusation that the trio failed to summon medical help for the victim in a timely manner. In 2021, the charge against Vidal was upgraded to reckless homicide due to his role as the director of the ceremony. He was accused of failing to properly monitor the amount of toxin Abad ingested and of supplying the fatal dose. While the current status of the case is unclear, he could face up to 4 years in prison if convicted on the charge. 2. Lauren Wombles, aka Aubrey Gold. While most Americans cautiously celebrated the 4th of July holiday during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, an adult performer and 2 co-conspirators were busy killing an Alabama man over an alleged drug debt. 51-year-old Raul Ambrose Guillen was last seen alive at his home in Dothan with 23-year-old Lauren Wombles, better known as Aubrey Gold, the young woman's boyfriend, 35-year-old William Shane Parker, and a third suspect, 43-year-old Jeremy Odell Peters. That same day, Guillen reportedly called his ex-wife and asked for money. He said he got mixed up with the wrong people and made it clear that he felt unsafe. Over a month later, an investigation into Guillen's disappearance led police to Peters' home in Graceville, Florida. Cadaver dogs found the missing man's decomposing body in a shallow grave nearby. Guillen had been shot in the back of the head. William Parker confessed to pulling the trigger and was charged with second-degree murder. Wombles and Peters were also charged in connection with the case. During his trial, Parker took the stand and recanted his confession, claiming he took the rap for the murder because he knew he could handle doing prison time and that Wombles couldn't. He said he pieced the story together based on bits and pieces of information he gleaned from his alleged accomplices. But the jury didn't buy Parker's revised version of events. He was found guilty as charged and sentenced to life without parole. Peters was convicted of accessory after the fact and conspiracy to commit witness tampering and received a 20-year prison sentence. Wombles agreed to testify against Parker and Peters and pleaded no contest to 1 count of accessory after the fact to second-degree murder. She received a 10-year prison sentence in exchange for her cooperation. The former adult actress starred in over 30 movies between 2015 and 2018. After that, Wombles started getting in serious trouble with the law, racking up 6 arrests over a 2-year period prior to the murder case. She was awaiting trial on a drug charge when she was accused of participating in Guillen's murder. And while she's paying a serious price for her actions, she'll still be lucky enough to get out of prison at a young enough age to have a long and fulfilling future, if she chooses to go down the correct path. 1. Jordan Joplin. In a shocking case out of Ketchikan, Alaska, a former exotic dancer and adult film star named Jordan Joplin was accused of robbing and killing a 58-year-old surgeon named Dr. Eric Garcia. According to prosecutors, the 32-year-old Washington resident had befriended Garcia in 2014. The two developed a close friendship and eventually became romantic partners. In March 2017, Joplin traveled to Alaska to spend a day with Garcia before returning back to the US mainland. A few days later, Joplin called the police and asked them to perform a welfare check on Garcia, who'd failed to show up for a planned get-together in Washington state. Officers stomped at Garcia's house, but left without entering, believing nobody was home. 9 days later, Joplin traveled to Ketchikan and called police to Garcia's residence again. He had a set of keys, which he used to let the cops inside Garcia's house, and was driving his lover's truck. Police found Garcia dead inside the house. An autopsy concluded that he died from a fatal cocktail of strong opioid painkillers and benzodiazepines, including morphine, methadone, Valium, and Ativan. An estimated 2 tons of valuables were missing from the home, including electronics, a coin collection, around $50,000 worth of watches and jewelry, and a $320,000 liquor collection. The killer had managed to disable Garcia's home security system, which was one of the first clues that the suspect knew the victim and had access to the residence. Further investigation revealed that during his visit to see Garcia right before the surgeon's death, Joplin had ordered 3 shipping containers to be delivered to the home. He was accused of loading the containers with the stolen valuables and shipping them to his home in Washington. During a search of Joplin's house, investigators found Garcia's wallet and cell phone. An analysis of bank records showed that Joplin had transferred more than $30,000 from Garcia's accounts into his own over a 2-week period following his visit to Alaska. Detectives also found a disturbing cell phone video that appeared to show Garcia in an unresponsive state on the suspected day of his murder. Additional evidence proved that Joplin drove the victim's truck to the airport later that night and flew back to the lower 48. In 2023, more than 5 years after Garcia's death, a jury found Joplin guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and first-degree theft. His sentencing was originally scheduled for October 2023, but has been delayed. He's facing anywhere from 30 to 101 years behind bars. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get caught with your pants down in a public place or walk in on one of your parents with their pants down? Tell us which one would be the most embarrassing in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.